Welcome back to our second episode of I Beaou Podcast. I'm your host, Poom, and you are here with our co-hosts, Ink and Palm. Today, we are privileged to have our special guest on our show. He is from
Hello.
Singapore.
Yep. Okay, so my name is Dean. I think I hope some of you know me or still remember me. Anyway, I'll be joining for this session, and I hope maybe I can appear on more occasions in the future, unless they kick me out for being too unfunny for a podcast. I'll try and be talkative.
Alright, so today's topic will be World War One. This is probably the most stalemate war in our world history. And even though it seems like there is nothing in this war, it is very important in terms of strategic, in terms of overall impacts upon the world. So let's get started.
Okay, so I suppose the best way to get started on talking about World War One is discussing the prelude to World War One, like the context of the world, specifically Europe at the time, since most of the action took place in Europe. So maybe Palm wants to start on that. An overview of Europe.
World War One is one of the greatest war in world history, causing about 70 million casualties.
Yeah. In fact, it's also called the Great War. That's the other name for it. War is not great, though. I do not condone violence. Weight refers to the scale, not the... What?
I have some information which said that there were around 7 million people who were killed and around 40 million people who were disappeared. So I think it's pretty interesting to think that there are a lot more disappeared than dead. I guess because they couldn't find their corpses.
Sometimes the bodies could be like unidentifiable and stuff. But the death toll can be... By death toll, are you considering the civilian deaths as well? Because a lot of civilians died in World War One. World War One was the first war where there's use of I think bombing raids. In fact, like I think it was in January 1915 when the first German Zeppelin reached London. Dropped bombs on civilians, and since then, bombing on cities has become a tactic used in countless wars. Yeah. So
I think there were. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about the death toll, then we definitely have to take military deaths into account. Then we also have to take civilian deaths. It's also something kind of like World War II. Do you take the Holocaust deaths into account when you refer to the 80 million dead after the war? Yeah, it's kind of like that. Anyway, I think death toll should come towards the end of our discussion rather than the causes of World War I.
I will first talk about the cause of World War One, going into other details. 4 main causes of World War One related into main, which is militarization, alliances, imperialism, and nationalization. Militarization in the late 19th century was an era of military competition, particularly between major European powers. For example, the policy of building a stronger military was judged relative to neighbors. I would say it creates a culture of paranoia that the search of allies is the second topic.
I think there were some sort of colonization at that time as well. Like for example in Southeast Asia.
Colonization.
Yeah. That's related to imperialism.
Imperialism. So colonization is part of imperialism. Empire is basically it's
I think another thing related to militarization is how like the technological development seems like quite scary at the time because the Wright brothers just discovered planes like about 10 years, around 10 years.
Well, one of the reasons why World War I started was because military advancements, a lot of them have been made at the turn of the 20th century. So these countries had, submarines, they had planes, and they were like, their military was so beefed up.
In
Taking
Germany,
the
in particular, looked to expand its navy. However, the naval was not the real contest in the war.
the navy, right? So you're referring to how the British Navy is still very superior.
It's still
No, but these countries were world powers at the time. Like in early 20th century, I think these European nations might be considered more powerful than even the USA in some aspects. These nations had massive empires, had massive military forces, and by 1914 they were divided into like two big alliances. So tensions were extremely high. There's also a lot of nationalism involved. Some smaller countries wanted independence, self-determination. That's what happened to. That's one of the causes that actually led to the assassination of the Archduke in the first place. So international tensions were accumulating, and so all it took was just one single incident to set off a devastating chain of events, and that incident happened to be the assassination of a certain Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Could we just talk about a web of alliances?
Oh yeah, the alliances. So Europe by 1914 was divided into two big blocks, the LOC, or alliances basically. These two blocks would eventually become Allied powers and the Central powers. Although before that, I think they had a different name. I'm not sure what the
triple alliances and triple and
the triple entente, triple entente.
okay.
Yeah, the triple alliance was basically an alliance between Britain, France, and Russia. These were the three main stakeholders. These were the three main belligerents in the Allied powers during the war as well. And as for Germany, Central powers. What were the Central powers called before World War I?
Triple alliances. I'm not sure. Probably triple alliances with like from German, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, but they later change it to Turkey. But I'm not 100% sure.
Wait, is it Italy, not the Ottoman?
Quadruple, yeah. So apparently it's the German Empire, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, Kingdom of Bulgaria. So so some people might not know what the Ottoman Empire was. The Ottoman Empire was a massive empire in the Middle East. So nowadays I think most of it was centered in Turkey. The Ottoman Empire was a massive empire and had very, very notable emperors like Suleiman, right? That was way before World War I. Anyways, it was struggling by the time of World War I. And so one of the reasons why it joined the Central Powers was so that it could sustain itself. Now obviously the Central Powers lost, so with the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. Actually, we're doing such a bad job at explaining. I think people might not know what the Central Powers and the Allies consisted of.
Summarize on that, the Triple Alliance consisting of the Austria-Hungary and Italy was formed in 1882. Meanwhile, Entente,
It's
consisting of France
Entente or something.
and Russia, was founded in 1907. Were
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going to
Franco
say that
the Franco War previously also the cause of the war because of mistrust of Germany.
So it's basically Britain, France, and Russia versus Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria, because Italy eventually moved to the allies, quote unquote
We
allied
can
powers.
talk about that.
Yeah. When did Italy change sides again? I forgot. Italy,
About like borders.
Italy
Yeah,
in World War One.
I think the
Italy-
Allies promised to give the land in like Venice to Italy, Austria-Hungary.
Yeah. Oh, we also territory. Territory was also a big incentive for countries to join World War One. Many of these empires wanted to expand. Many of them were promised territorial gains after the war. In fact, this was the main incentive for, I think, Japan and Italy. We haven't mentioned Japan yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Japan didn't
I
play that
agree
big of
with
a role.
I agree with the land area. I mean the territory though, because obviously for the imperialism part, obviously like the big like empires want more resources and
Yeah.
like land. So they were kind of like conquering like Southeast Asia and other region. So they do this for obviously for wealth and for other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So this would lead to like kind of like small wars, I guess. And when there are wars, this also leads to conflict. And also, as you say that there are gains from war. Obviously, everyone had motive at that time to join war, whether it will be like political incentives, whether it will be like economical incentive or something like
Yeah.
patriotism. So I think it's something that we have to think about as well when
Okay.
we move forward on.
So basically, tensions were brewing, and it all culminated in the assassination of Duke Franz Ferdinand, which I mentioned earlier. So Franz Ferdinand was an Austro-Hungarian crown prince, I think,
Okay,
an
so
heir presumptive.
yeah,
presumptive.
presumptive.
Yeah.
I think we can give some context for someone who like didn't know.
Okay, so
what
you might
happened.
be confused by what do I mean by Austria-Hungary. So back then, Austria and Hungary, they were one country basically. They formed, they joined to form an empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So after the war, they got split into Austria and Hungary as we know them today. Yeah, but during World War One, they were collectively known as one state, I think. No, not one state. How do I describe it? It's one empire. Yeah.
The heir presumptive is the person in the next line of the succession to the throne.
Yeah. So basically, this prince guy was very important to Austria-Hungary.
Presume because he is not
Yeah.
directly the son of the king.
So it's like,
Obviously, it's a huge deal.
yeah. So imagine someone shooting your country's prince. Imagine Prince Charles getting killed. Yeah, imagine Prince Charles getting killed by like French intelligence personnel. That's basically what it was. So why was it? Why did it lead to World War One though? Because Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he died in Bosnia. The
I
assassin.
think you should give some context that so Austria-Hungary wanted to like combine the Slavic people, right? So they also sent like Duke Ferdinand to like help promote that
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. So there were a lot of ethnic tensions between the Slavic people. Which were a lot of them were in like Serbia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And part of the reason, so this prince he got sent to Bosnia on like a diplomatic mission. I'm here so we can live together in harmony. Austrian sounds scary and stuff, but you're also kind of sending your archduke into quote unquote enemy territory. So because there were a lot of people hated the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and this archduke represented it. So he got targeted by a group of Serbian nationalists called the Black Hand. Yeah. And
so
the guy who eventually killed the archduke was called Gavrilo Princip.
wow, that's
So
pretty-
basically,
a lot of detail.
a group of Serbian assassins killed the archduke in Bosnia. Basically, that's what happened. So
Ah,
there were debates about whether or not the Serbian government was actually involved in ordering the assassination. I think that's what Austria-Hungary suspected. So after the assassination, Austria-Hungary was furious. So I think they sent a list of demands. Right? They sent an ultimatum to the Serbian government. I think was it Bosnia? Was it the Bosnian government? So not
sure.
well read.
Government for like the assassination.
Yeah. So Austria-Hungary sent a document, demanding a lot of things, and I think I remember what was it, Serbia or what did they send it to Serbia or Bosnia?
In Serbia though.
Serbia. So they sent it to Serbia, and I think Serbia acquiesced to all of the demands except for one, which was to investigate the government involvement. I think. So since it was an ultimatum and it was not, no compromise was made for this, so Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Since I've told you guys, since you guys now know that Europe was divided into two big groups. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Germany also declared war on Serbia. And then Russia, since Russia was Serbia's friend, Russia declared war on Germany. Since France was Russia's friend, France also declared war. Can someone present a map for the?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, like a map with different colors representing the allied powers and the central powers. Now I have an echo.
Do you want this one or this one?
The one on the bottom.
Nothing.
Please. Yes. Oh, that resolution is
You can mute
feces.
the screen.
So
Yeah,
basically, I think
can mute the screen. There's an echo going on.
You can do it yourself.
Cold. What do I do it?
No.
Technical
You
difficulties.
can continue talking.
Would this affect the viewing experience? It's
You can
affecting
continue
me.
talking. I'll share screen there.
Right. So Europe was divided into two big gangs, basically, right? Since this one gang member decided to go brawl with another very small gang member, Serbia wasn't a big country. Serbia was not like a major stakeholder in either of the alliances. Anyway, so I am one of the first books. Actually, it was the book that made me fall in love with history, especially World War One. It described the prelude to World War One as two street gangs, kind of yelling at each other, insulting each other. Oh, you suck, we're better, and stuff like that. But there's no actual fighting, right? All it took for all hell to break loose was for one random gang member to throw a stone, throw a rock, Basically, that's what happened. Serbia threw the rock in a way, and it pissed off the Central Powers. So once that one random gang member threw the rock, the whole thing was kaboom. So basically, both sides declared war on each other. That's basically what happened. Initially, Britain didn't want to join. Initially, Britain was Britain didn't declare war along with the rest of the Triple Entente. However, the Germans wanted to invade France, so the Germans marched
I
into
think
Belgium.
Bam want to talk, and maybe you can like let Bam talk as
So
well.
you forgot
because
Oh,
to
yeah,
I
sure,
mention
sorry.
talk a little bit.
two countries who joined the
Countries who joined. Countries who
Okay,
joined.
it's
Okay, Switzerland didn't join.
Bulgaria.
Haha.
Ottoman.
Bulgaria did join, right?
But
Because of
But
their
Bulgaria didn't play a very big role.
phobias of Serbia, so they joined the Central Powers, and also an empire want to maintain their relationship to Germany. So
Serbia joined the Central Powers.
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, sorry, I thought Serbia. Yeah, Bulgaria was part of the Central Powers because Bulgaria was So Bulgaria joined the Central Powers. What was the reason again?
Their phobias of
Phobias of whom?
Yeah.
Phobias of what? Sorry.
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think Bam was trying to say that the country was kind of like scared because so they had to take some action, I guess. And like, did Belgium join as well?
No,
Because
Belgium
I
got
know that
invaded.
Belgium kind of
I don't. No, I don't think.
German.
I don't think Belgium joined. I think Belgium got invaded.
So they kind of like neutral, and like after Belgium got invaded, so Belgium technically, as you can see from the map, Belgium is like just above of France and like connect to German.
Belgium was
So-
neutral. Okay,
Oh.
yeah. Belgium was neutral until it got invaded, obviously.
So like
Anyway, no.
after German kind of like invade the British Empire kind of like came to help Belgium because as Belgium want to be neutral, so it's kind of like
Yes.
kind of
So
fair
yeah.
for Belgium.
Actually, I phrased it wrong. I think Belgium was always neutral. Yeah. Anyway, because the Belgian government
Belgium was always neutral, but it was invaded, so they have to respond by military action as well.
they did mobilize the armed forces.
You face a little resistance from Belgium too. At the beginning.
Yeah, no, but so when they were invaded, there was some resistance. Yeah.
I think-
Okay. Anyway,
Some context whether like why Germany didn't like invaded France directly, but they
okay. So it's called the Schlieffen Plan. Basically, Germany wanted
I
to.
kinda
Germany.
I think I can explain that, Dean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I guess.
Right. Let's see.
So basically, one of like the lead soldiers in Germany wanted to prepare in the case that if there's like French and Russian invasion from both sides, so that they can defend on both sides. Because as you can see, Russia is in like brown here, and France is in green color here, and Russia is there. So basically, the plan is to divide the soldiers into 3 sections. First is like near the French border, just some small troops, and another is in the Russian borders, just some small troops as well, to just like basically hold them off for a while. And they'll send another troops to Belgium side, and then to like ambush the back of French army. But unfortunately, it failed because of several reasons. But we can discuss about that later.
Yeah. So
After you correct me.
Yeah, you're mostly correct. So basically, because Germany is unlucky to be stuck in the middle, right? Yeah. So one of Germany's biggest security concerns would be that it's surrounded by enemies. See how to the west there's France, to the east there's Russia. Both of these countries have declared war on Germany. So Germany wanted to beat both countries. However, Germany can't possibly focus all its military efforts on both fronts at once, right? So Germany knew that Russia was a very big country and would take a longer time to mobilize and prepare for war. So Germany, there was this guy called Schlieffen, and he made a plan for such an event. So the plan was for Germany to invade France by going through Belgium and the Netherlands, and then beat France quickly. And then once France has been beaten, move everyone back to the Eastern Front to beat Russia. That's the Schlieffen Plan, and so that's the first one of the first main confrontations in World War One.
So discuss what went wrong there. So,
What went wrong with the Schlieffen Plan? Yeah, okay.
so
So once again, World War One began in 1914. World War One began in 1914. So Austria, so it began on July 28th, 1914. And so the Schlieffen Plan happened towards the end of 1914. Once people started mobilizing and stuff, Germany was very quick with the attack. Germany started attacking. So in fact, Germany was winning. Britain and France didn't have a lot of time to prepare for the attack, and Germany made very rapid progress. And in fact, Germany was about to take over France, because Germany was just outside of Paris. France and Britain have been retreating. Germany is pushing down south. But just before they got to Paris, what happened? The French stopped retreating. The French decided to hold their ground and send the German forces back. And this was one of the most important battles of the war. This was called the First Battle of the Marne. The Marne was a French river. I'm gonna embarrass myself if that's not how you pronounce Marne. The French people are psychopaths. How do you pronounce Marne? It's Marne, right? Marne. It is Marne. Marne. Yeah, the First Battle of the Marne. So basically, that's when the tables turned, because Germany was winning up to that point. In fact, if that battle didn't happen, I think France would lose very promptly. Paris would be captured in no time, and it would be basically World War II. It will be about what happened to France in World War II. Anyway, the First Battle of the Marne happened, and the British forces and the French forces pushed the Germans back up to Netherlands, Belgium, and then it was stalemate. And then it was like that for the rest of the war. So what happened was basically they didn't get anywhere. So imagine this is France, right? Is this mirrored? Does this represent the East-West properly? Is this East for you guys? No, sorry, is this West for you guys? This is East. Makes sense? Yeah, maybe use the plan. Maybe use the map. Anyway, so basically, Poom, can you point the cursor to Paris, northeastern France? Have a cursor. Point to Paris, northeastern France.
not sure my
Northeastern
geography
France.
is- Oh, so it's
Yeah. So basically, Germany stopped about there. Germany was stopped there by the French and the British forces, and then they got pushed back all the way to Belgium, the Netherlands. Can you move the cursor up? Yeah. So basically, they got stopped there, and then Britain and France couldn't push them back because after they're done once they're done retreating, they started doing a pro gamer move. They ducked down to what's known as trenches. Did you have a picture of a trench? So basically, after retreating for a while, they stopped retreating and they dug down into the ground to create these trench lines.
That's a hallmark of
Is it yeah? When people think of World War One, it's trenches. Yeah. The Western Front, anyways. But most of the cool stuff happened on the Western Front. So that's German trench. So basically, they dug these long trenches into the ground, and over time, these trenches became massive systems. They were like very complicated. They had like a very specific pattern to them. Like there's a frontline trench, and then there's a communication trench to like a reserve trench and stuff like that. Anyway, these trench systems were scattered throughout Belgium and Belgium and the Netherlands, basically. And once the German dug down, British also dug down because once the enemy has formed like such a strong defensive line, right? You can't. It becomes very hard to just like push. Then you get gunned down. They had the terrain that they occupied was superior. In fact, it was also superior because I think Germany had the high ground. Star Wars memes, anyone? Germany had the high ground. So not only were they in a trench, they were also in a trench on a hill. So Britain and France had to dig trenches on lower terrain, and this affected the conditions for the soldiers.
Sorry to interrupt, but there will be questions in the end about trenches condition too. So maybe we say like some trenches stuff.
Yeah.
Don't like go to the trenches.
Okay. So trench warfare. So why did it last so long? Because it was so hard to get any substantial progress. Basically, how trench warfare works, right? So there's an enemy trench, then there's your trench. You want to take the enemy trench, so you send a bunch of men from your trench running across no man's land. That's the heath in the middle. They send a bunch of soldiers running towards the enemy, and very hard to get to the enemy trench because they're fortified in the trenches, right? They had machine guns, they had landmines, they had barbed wires. It's super hard to get across no man's land, and the defenders always held a very strong advantage most of the time. They had better positions, right? It's very hard to run towards someone hiding in a hole with machine guns pointing towards you. So most of these trench raids would result in carnage for the attacker, and they would keep doing this. So they're basically sending people running towards the enemy to get shot down until one day they finally take the trench, and then they win like 100 meters. That's why nobody got anywhere. You see how it was. You see how it was a stalemate, as Poom described. And sorry.
I think there's in Vietnam wars, I think they dig some
Vietnam
holes, so like
but those
they dug
those
some
weren't
hole
trenches.
for like defensive
Dark holes.
positions
The Vietnamese
and like for offensive position as well. But
the North
why
Vietnam, those
why
weren't
didn't they
trenches.
do it for World War II?
Or one.
World War I.
I know. no. Maybe the terrain was less accommodating. I don't know. Because you also have to keep in mind that by the time of World War One, like World War One was less than 100 years after Napoleon. It's kind of crazy, you know. People were fighting with muskets just 50 years before World War One, and so military tactics were still very old-fashioned. People still did cavalry charges in World War One. Cavalry charges where soldiers would like hold swords and ride on horses, glorious Napoleonic style. Anyway, so I saw someone say that World War One was basically a Napoleonic war, but with machine guns. That's why it was so deadly. Because in the Napoleonic wars, how they fought was that they would create like these big long lines of soldiers. They would shoot at each other across the big fields, right? So that's basically that's still quite similar to World War One. The difference was that there were machine guns, there were fighter planes, there were gas attacks, there were trenches. So it was way deadlier than the Napoleonic battles.
The usage of like tanks, which I don't think.
I think we'll get to that later. Like as we progress, maybe we can bring up the different technological advancements. Yeah. Anyway, we're still in 1914. Not much happened in 1914.
This is
But basically World War One was a big.
I also would like to add, like you talk about Napoleon as well. So overseas France kind of like attack Russia around like sometimes earlier, but like
Oh
Napoleon
yeah,
attacked
that's in
them,
1812.
but they,
1812.
they kind of like they kind of joined together in World War Two, World War One. So that's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that I'm not sure why they kind of
Shifted.
like
I
died
think Palm
together.
knows. I think Palm knows about this.
What do you think?
Think about
Why did Why did France become Russia's ally after even after Napoleonic era?
Or maybe like what you said, like because like an enemy of enemy is an
friend.
ally, something like that. Because France is an enemy, is an enemy of Germany, and also Russia is enemy of Germany as well. So maybe this is my interpretation because I'm not sure if it's right. So maybe like Russia and France join together to combat Germany
Yeah,
because they have like same
no.
enemy.
One thing you have to keep in mind was that Napoleon wasn't there for very long actually. So and he was hated by most of Europe. So so basically, once Napoleon was gone, like France wasn't just always hyper aggressive.
Yeah,
So
I would presume that it's an attempt to deter Germany from
yeah,
starting a war because of two-sided enemies.
I think there were also military conflicts in the 19th century, like the Crimean War, the stuff like that. I'm not very knowledgeable about that,
Conflict.
unfortunately.
Wait, I have a question. Uh, where was like the Poland invasion between like Russia and Germany again? Like the one before World War One, not like the one because like if you look at the map, can you pull up a map again?
All right. And by the way, Ying just got his
Oh yeah,
wisdom
to remove
to
those.
remove,
So I
so
can't talk
maybe
that
he
much.
can talk clearly.
Oh yeah, Ink got his wisdom teeth removed. So let's wish him a speedy recovery.
I just choose
We can
another one.
talk about so we can share merrily talk about people dying in a very pointless war.
That's like if you look at the map here, right? Poland would be like around to the right, Germany, and like there's
The
no
map is I can't see the map. The map is still loading.
it has been like covered within like the German Empire, Hungary, stuff, right? So it's an effort that it was also like a joint effort between German and Russia during the invasion of Poland. And so why is like Russia why would there be like tension between Russia and Germany? Like after the fact that they both like I guess like invaded Poland.
Are you referring to World War II?
No. I'm referring to World War One. Because like Poland has been invaded like quite a lot of times, right? And I'm not sure about like the times before World War One, about like the Poland invasion.
Oh, okay. I think Poland was just unlucky to be in the middle.
Mm.
I don't think making Poland really puts these countries against or with each other.
Yeah, but I'm kind of
There were no there were definitely other reasons. Poland might have been one of them, but I'm not very knowledgeable about like mid 19th century Europe. I think Palm knows more about that, but Palm has a lot more uh, a wider range of knowledge than I
Poland
do.
has long time been invaded by Russia. The World War One actually caused to gain independence.
Yeah. Poland. Oh yeah, Poland wasn't even a country during World War One, right?
As you look from the map,
Yeah, Poland wasn't a country in World War One. Like by the time World War, I can't see the map.
Yeah.
Map of Europe.
In the Middle
1914.
Age, Poland used to have its own kingdom or some kind of commonwealth.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually in 1914 Europe had way fewer countries. That's what I said, self-determination, right? When World War I ended, guys like Woodrow Wilson supported like self-determination and stuff. But these empires didn't want countries to become independent.
I think we should
So that's why.
context.
We
Woodrow Wilson
I
is the
think we
president.
should go back to the timeline of each.
Oh yeah, I'll go back to the timeline. Yeah. So answering Ing's question, Poland. There was no Poland. Yeah, I completely forgot. There was no Poland in 1914.
Actually, I would say the first battle of demands would be historian has pointed out that totally led to a German's defeat.
Yeah, the first battle of the Marne was basically Germany getting slapped back to Belgium and the Netherlands. So yeah, so that's basically the Western Front. So it's this tedious trench warfare lasted for 4 years basically. Anyway, so let's go year by year, then important stuff. So one notable event in 1914 actually didn't have that much significance was called the Christmas Truce. Yeah, Christmas truce. So a TRUCE, a truce is basically like a ceasefire. So basically during Christmas, the enemies stopped fighting. Okay, and it was in retrospect, I guess it's a rather touching moment. The generals reacted negatively though, because of course they didn't want their soldiers to befriend enemy soldiers. So the truce only lasted for like a few days, yeah? and yeah, it didn't lead to anything. So basically, people just stopped fighting and gave each other like chocolate for 1 day, and then after that they resumed
Nice, isn't
killing.
it?
That's nice. That's nice, but it
Like
And is like some sort of hospitality during the war, I guess.
it's nice, but it's also not nice. It's not nice because that shows the irony of war. People don't want to kill each other. There's no reason to kill each other, especially in World War I. You weren't killing an enemy for supporting slavery. You weren't killing an enemy for conducting a genocide against the Jewish people. It's a corporate war. World War I was a manufactured war created by the empires. Very, very political. Yeah. These people had nothing against each other. They were all like young men, like 18-year-olds. And the one part of the reason why the big Christmas truce only happened in 1914 was because it was still very early on in the war. People were not exposed to the horrors of it yet, in a sense. They were still kind of, back then war was still a glorious thing. To die for your country is an honor. Il duce et decorum est. I think that's the Latin phrase for it.
Is that some sort of like mentality that we used to have back in like, I'm not sure when we used to like when we have knight and stuff like middle age, something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, there's no.
Or is
There's
it
no.
something that we do practice? Like, I'm not sure
There's
what
no-
I'm trying to ask. So
What were you saying? Sorry.
so basically, like if you die, it is an honor, right? Is it
Yeah.
something that human used to practice, like for?
It's the mentality
before-
people had. People joined World War I like happily. They volunteered for service because they were like, I'm gonna fight for my country. It's an honorable thing. It's a glorious thing. After 4 years, World War I changed warfare because it was so gruesome. Basically, after that, people hated war. Yeah. So you see why World War I people wanted World War I. World War I was what's gonna happen because people wanted like I got these new weapons, let's go fight. By the time of World War II, you see what happened. They desperately tried to do everything to stop war. Because World War I was devastating. People were still like, oh, war is such a cool thing. And then by the end of 1918, they're like, no, it's terrible. And that's the significance of World War I. Also, I wanted to correct, it's not Il Duce. It's not Il Duce. Il Duce is Mussolini's name. Mussolini's title as leader of Italy. Sorry, I not good at my Italian and Latin. Anyways, dulce. I don't know how to read Latin. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. That means it is a sweet and fitting thing to die for your country. A very famous war poem, one of the most famous ones. Anyways, what was I talking about? Yeah, the Christmas truce, people were still like innocent in a way back then. They weren't exposed to the gruesome reality of what the next 4 years would bring to them yet. That's why the Christmas truce happened, and then the Christmas truce ended. Then people started fighting again. That's the end of 1914. 1915 saw in January 1915, the first German Zeppelin reached London. Now, what's a Zeppelin? Is it Robert Plant and Jimmy Page? It's not Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. No. It's not Led Zeppelin. A Zeppelin is a type of airship. People don't use airships in war anymore, but they used it back in World War I. So maybe Poom can show what a Zeppelin looks like. Just look up Zeppelin. It was quite a big part of World War I. Just share your screen and look up like Zeppelin. Try not to get Led Zeppelin because I don't want some whole lot of love. It's a very cool song, by the way.
Something like this, I'm not sure.
I was making Led Zeppelin jokes and then I realized people might not know Led Zeppelin. It's sad.
I know, but
So it's like a big air balloon, I guess.
It's a big balloon. Yeah, can you show it? People might think it's like circular. It's not circular. It's cylindrical. The Zeppelin was a big
This
sausage.
is actually like very huge.
It was massive. Zeppelins were massive. That's why they stopped using Zeppelins after some time because it's a big balloon. You're sending a balloon across the English Channel to bomb cities. People learn how to deal with Zeppelins after some time. English Channel.
It's kind of like the concept of like the bigger the thing is, the easier to be targeted to.
Yeah, no, because you were sending balloons. Think is like you've seen the movie Up, right? Think you're sending the house to like bomb someone. So slow, it's immobile, and it's a big balloon. It's a massive target. So after, but Zeppelins were a very important part of early stages of World War I because it's the first time war reached the civilians. You know, before that, in like the American Civil War, people could go to like a battlefield and like, oh, let's look at the action.
Yeah.
World War I, they sent bombs to London. They killed innocent people. Damn Germans. Right, Germany's been a good boy for 70, 80 years now. So, okay. Hey, Poom, can you show the Zeppelin? I want to see the Zeppelin. I want to see the balloon.
I think I have already like shown that though.
I have not seen it.
That's fine.
You already shown it. That must mean my watch stream. Did not click watch stream. Sorry, I was looking up. Yeah, that's a Zeppelin. So basically, you see how big these are. They're called like airships. So a Zeppelin was a German airship, and they had bombs in these, and they sent these over the English Channel to bomb British cities. So in early 1915, civilians woke up to see these big sky sausages, and they bombed them. So it's a pre-World War II blitz basically. But eventually, the people learned to fend off against the Zeppelins because they were very easy targets. Searchlights, fighter aircrafts, they repelled the Zeppelins very easily. So after a while, the Germans stopped using Zeppelins and used bomber planes instead. Anyways, that's still 1915. 1915 also another important weapon technological advancement was introduced in warfare. In a battle called so also once again I'm bringing up these technological advancements because a lot of new technology was used in World War One. So it's basically the war that modernized Europe. Like before that, people still used like bayonets, and the French still dressed like outrageously like blue, red costumes. So World War One basically gave the whole of Europe like a big smack. Say like, hey, this won't work anymore when you got machine guns and airplanes and stuff like that. Okay, another important new weapon. In 1915, there's a battle called the Second Battle of Ypres. Ypres, I just how you pronounce it. Ypres. I don't know how you say it. Ypres. Ypres. Anyway, chlorine gas was used. Now, if you guys do chemistry, then you might know that chlorine gas is very poisonous. So, who came up with the idea to use chlorine gas in trench warfare? So, how they use it, right? They would take these huge containers, and then they would wait for the wind to blow towards the enemy. They would open it. These massive pale green fumes would come towards the enemy, and it was first used against the French, and the French was very startled by it because they thought it was like some sort of like smoke bomb to conceal an incoming attack. It was actually toxic gas, and so a lot of people
use it back, right?
Sorry.
So like after this chemical weapon, French also use it back on
the Allies also use it. Yeah. So Germany did it first, then the Allies also did it afterwards. So here's an very cool trivia. Production of ammonia. Nitrogen plus hydrogen equals ammonia. It's called the Haber process. And the guy this Fritz Haber person, he's a German scientist, and in World War One, he's responsible for coming up with these chemical weapons. So the guy who gave you the Haber process also gave you chlorine gas. So people were angry. I think he got a Nobel Prize. So people were angry when he got the Nobel Prize. He played a big role in World War One. Anyway, chemical warfare was introduced in World War One, and since then it's been used sometimes. Like in recent years, I think Saddam Hussein used it. Anyway, so World War One, 1915. That's the Western Front, by the way. Outside of the Western Front, another important campaign happened. You remember how the Ottoman Empire was with the Central Powers? It's with Germany and Austria-Hungary. Yeah. So basically, Britain wanted to attack the Ottoman Empire and kind of like, I guess, reach. So they kind of wanted to do like a D-Day, but on the Ottoman Empire. They thought the Turkish army would suck. They thought they could easily get from Turkey to Germany, but they wanted to open up a second front. So they sent Anzac soldiers. Anzac soldiers were the combined forces of New Zealand and Australian soldiers. They sent them to Gallipoli, which is the name of a part of the Ottoman Empire. And no, the Turkish did not suck at all. The Turkish fought back quite effectively, in fact. And the Ottoman Empire was a very long and grueling campaign, which ended up in Allied defeat. So basically, they had to evacuate the Anzac troops back. The conditions were horrible. I'll get to trench warfare. I'll get to conditions in the trenches later. But basically, why the trenches were horrible to live in, right? The trenches had no roofs. It's this big long hole in the ground. Whenever it rains, the rain. Okay, so think of it. So basically, imagine having to stay in a hole in your garden for 4 years. That's trench warfare. So whenever it rained, you have to sit in the rain, and there were rats the size of mices. Oh, wait, no, that's even small. Mice. Okay, first of all, mices isn't a word. Second of all, mice are smaller than rats. Anyways, I'm becoming sleepy. The rats in the trenches were like bigger than. I think they were like cat size. And that's what the soldiers described them. And conditions were horrible. Dead bodies were everywhere. Proper burial was very hard, and so there were lots of dead bodies, and so these dead bodies attracted like massive rats. Hygiene was horrible. You had to dig these holes to like defecate in, and once it rained or everything will like come up. It's almost always flooded, very muddy, very stinky. You can't stand up straight most of the time, because if you stood up straight, and the enemy snipers from the enemy trench can shoot you in the head. You have to cower down and stay in these hellholes for a very long time. So in terms of conditions, I think World War I was actually worse than World War II. In terms of living
but
conditions,
nowadays
you basically
our like healthcare, our hygiene is also better. So I think, because right now, if you want to like, if there's like a military in like one pack, I'm not sure how to say it. In like one pack of military, there's obviously need to be some sort of like nurse or doctors, or I'm not sure how to say it.
there
So
were
basically,
medics.
there will
There
be
were-
box or so, but
Let me move
nowadays
I'm
I think it's better though.
getting attacked
in
by
terms of, like-
mosquitoes. No, there were doctors in World War One. It's not about the trenches, the conditions in the trench. There's a very specific thing with trenches, because there were big holes in the ground. When it rained, it would especially for the British, because the British were on lower terrain, right? That's why you always want the high ground. So it's over. Germany had the high grounds. That's a Star Wars reference. Anyway, it was not over, obviously, because the British beat Germany. Anyway, conditions in the trenches were very, because of the nature. And yes, so
I think Dean is kind of like lacking. So, what do you think about the trench warfare?
Sorry.
I think it's kind of pointless and a waste of time.
right, hi, I'm back. Let
Maybe
me show my beautiful face. Oh,
said that trench warfare is kind of like pointless, because obviously it is like a waste of resources for both sides.
it's
But-
pointless. Pointless wouldn't be the.
Right,
It's a stalemate. It's very it's very tedious. Yeah, it's a very tedious method of warfare, because it's hard to get any progress done, and they would have to waste like tens of thousands of lives to get like 800 meters. It's ridiculous. That's why the Western Front was called a stalemate, as Poom described. French
Yeah, and I-
warfare
he,
played a
like,
big role.
But back then, like with the technological development of like at that time, like the only way to like kind of counter trench warfare is only to like use this trench warfare as well. That there's no like not really like any better way to counter that too. But I think as like the technological development happens and better
No, no,
technology, better air raids, like after the war, there might be like a better way to like kind of like counteract the trench warfare and don't have to use this trench warfare.
Well, I suppose so. Yeah. But you can't just change the method of warfare in the middle of war. You can't go like, hey, enemy, I want to get my troops out. You're gonna get your troops out. We're gonna not shoot each other. And we're gonna figure out how to do this differently. That
Yeah.
didn't happen. Yeah. So
yeah. So basically, like,
trench
if
warfare
someone got up, they will be shot.
So you had to
They'll
stay in
probably
these
be-
holes until you got ordered to move out of it towards the enemy lines. So basically, yeah. So I think most people here would have seen Wonder Woman. there's a scene where the Allied forces raid a German trench, right? So of course, since there was no Wonder Woman around in World War One, conditions were a lot worse for the soldiers on the offense. There's no man's land, right? It's this big blasted heath littered with landmines and barbed wires and enemy snipers and machine gunners staring down your throat, and you had to march towards the enemy trench. You had to march holding heavy rifles and military equipment, and you just get slaughtered, and it would take months for someone to get to the other trench. And this is why many of the battles were inconclusive. They ended in stalemates because way too many people would be dead, and no territorial progress would be made against the enemy. Yeah, no substantial terrain would be gained. And even if you gain
So
like a trench and but you lost like 50,000 men, would that be a victory? So a lot of the battles were considered inconclusive, and it's just
yeah,
it's basically 4 years of gruesome trench warfare. Yeah.
Wait, I think
I think war is kind of hard to declare. Like even the one who kind of like won the battle doesn't really want, because
Yeah.
obviously everyone lost in war.
It's very, especially in the western especially on the western front, because of it's very little like territorial gains compared to the number of men lost, right? So yeah, that's the western front. 1915, Gallipoli also mentioned.
wait, I think
So I always
like, specific examples of trenches warfare, maybe
trench warfare.
maybe like
Okay,
big battles.
big battles 1916. Well, no. Well, most of the battles I've described earlier were trench battles.
Yep.
The battle, but Gallipoli was also a trench warfare centered battle. The first battle of the Marne was not a trench warfare. First battle of the Marne did not rely on trench warfare because it was before before trench warfare became a thing. But the most famous trench battles took place in 1916 and 17. 1916, we have the Battle of Verdun. Does Palm want to say something?
You can keep on.
Okay, so the Battle of Verdun was an offensive, made by the Germans against the French. Okay, so Battle of the Verdun was a German attack on the French forces. The goal was to inflict heavy casualties. So it's the longest battle of the war. It's still, I think, is it still the longest battle of all time? What's the longest battle in history? Is it still Verdun? Yep, it's still Verdun. So Battle of Verdun is still the longest battle in history. It's very bloody. It
I feel
was
like it loses in like a very very short time too, right? Like around 1 million deaths in a very short time, or like million overall. I'm not sure. Wait, let me look it up.
I'm not sure about the details. Oh my god, that's a lot of
Yeah, it's
to
February.
basically
And December.
February to December, 9 months and 3 weeks and 6 days. That's super long for one single battle. Yeah, it's a French victory. France was the defender. But France also lost a lot of men. France lost more people than Germany. So, anyways, yeah. So the Germans wanted to. The Germans hoped that the French would want to keep Verdun as a French stronghold. So they attacked it, and they hoped that they could use this, that they could basically lure France to send in people to die, because they thought France would want to keep Verdun. They thought they wouldn't lose a lot of people, but actually it's equally bad for both sides, basically. Yeah.
Also, there's only one naval battle in World War One, which is Battle of Jutland. Can you talk about that a bit?
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that. I forgot. It's very random. When you think of World War One, you don't think of naval combat,
By the way,
basically.
it's
But
in May of 1916, so it's okay.
yeah.
It's okay.
Oh, I thought it's in. I thought it's in 1915. 1916. Yeah. Okay. So after the Battle of Verdun, there's the Battle of Jutland, which was a rather brief and inconsequential. Almost everything in World War One was inconsequential, but the Battle of Jutland was a brief naval confrontation in the North Sea, in the North Sea. Yeah. So they had these new type of warships called dreadnoughts, I think. So they wanted to use them, so they used them, and then they're very expensive, so they decided not to use them again. So basically, that's the Battle of Jutland, but it didn't lead to anything. It's the only important naval battle on the Western Front in World War One. Don't have to go into much detail about it. Would rather go into detail about naval confrontations in World War Two.
Wait, I think it's kind of like hypocritical a little bit too, though. The fact that like they are very like conservative about money, resources, but not kind of like they care, but like not that much with like human resources. Just like crews in the war, which just like
Well,
also like very
no,
important.
they did
We
care.
must read about. We must
No,
building like warships.
they did care. They did care for human resources, because then human resources. They did care for the. They did care
They
for
did care
the.
for human
They did care for the
human
human.
life.
They did care for the soldiers, of course, because if they lost too many people, they would run out of soldiers.
Yeah, but like
the,
I think I worded it wrong. I think it's like less than like the money in like building.
not really, because I wouldn't say so. Most no, it's because naval combat wouldn't lead to anything. It's not just because it's expensive. It wouldn't lead to a lot of yeah. So most of the combat was on land. So they would focus on land. Yeah, the naval combat in World War One was very insignificant. Okay, so after the battle of Verdun, right?
So indeed.
Yeah.
So like I think Germany troops was now into also like shut down British trade ship as well. I'm not sure it's kind of like
The
civilian
Lusitania.
ship, but they kind of like
Sinking of.
transport military weapons
Are you
to
saying?
supply for the
U-boats.
the British Empire.
Yeah. So another like new technological advancement that was used in World War One. U-boats was German submarines, and they would sink enemy ships using torpedoes. Yep. So I think it's the World War One was also the first war. I think the usage of submarine was banned. So that's technically a breach. Yeah. So these Germany's submarines would sink enemy ships carrying supplies. Yeah. So they did play a notable role in World War One. Anyway, after the also okay. Speaking of U-boats, we also have to mention the sinking of the Lusitania. Sinking of the RMS Lusitania. So RMS Lusitania was a passenger ship. It was a passenger ship that was sunk by an U-boat. Okay. Why was this significant? This was in 1915. This was okay. So I skipped this. Sorry. So in 1915, this ship got sunk by the Germans. Why was it important? It's important because this ship carried a lot of Americans. Now you might have noticed that I have not mentioned America before, and that's because America did not join World War One. America was quite an isolationist all the way up to World War Two. And one of the catalysts for eventual American involvement in World War One was the sinking of Rms Lusitania, because it killed a lot of innocent Americans. In fact, one of the reasons I think America didn't want to join World War One at first, because I think a lot of Americans were I think a decent number of Americans were sympathizing with the Germans, actually.
But I think there were a lot of German ethnics in America at that time too.
There were lots of Germans in America, yeah. So public opinion was actually does Palm know a lot about this? Why was America reluctant to join? Except for
because
what
of
I said.
the president's policy to general is kind of
Isolationist.
isolationist. Other
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah, so the president of America at that time was called Mr. Woodrow Wilson. Okay, let me consult my history textbook to be very clear.
But I don't think the US was not like that influential at that time, because
It was
not
quite
sure,
strong.
but-
It was quite strong because I think it was supplying was it giving Britain supplies? Yes, right.
but it is not as influential as I mean as it will be in World War II.
It did play a role, but not as big. No. Anyways, but it's still important because the US was always a big power. Anyways,
And I think at that time they built up very strong economically too, right? The US during the war for selling stuff to Britain and aided in the war.
I think they aided in the war effort, but they didn't join. Canada did join because Canada was part of the British Empire. Canada did play a significant role in World War One. So where was I? So think about So US would come join the war in 1917. So not now. Anyway, 1916. So the Battle of Verdun. Yes, Battle of Verdun was very devastating for the French, and in order to alleviate pressure on the French asked the British to counterattack, to launch a counterattack in order to basically distract the Germans. So the British decided to launch a counterattack at near a river called the Somme, and this was called the Battle of the Somme. This was perhaps the most famous of all the battles in World War One. Also the deadliest, I think. I think it was the right. I think it's definitely okay. Pretty sure it's the deadliest battle in World War One. It's actually Verdun. Was it Verdun? No way. Okay. One of the it's a very major confrontation, and I think it's known to be very bloody because of the first day alone. Actually, so on the first day, the British sent in these troops to attack the German lines, and on the first day alone, there were 50,000 casualties. 50,000 casualties in one day. To give you a perspective, let's compare that to a modern day conflict. Okay, so of course things have changed, and warfare now is not the same as it was back then. But to give you a perspective, in casualties, there were more. Okay, so the British suffered more casualties in one day of the Battle of the Somme than the whole US-led coalition did in 20 years of the war in Afghanistan. That's crazy. The first day of the Somme was catastrophe for the British Army. 50,000 casualties, 50,000 men either wounded or killed in one day. Massive amount. And that's why it's one of the most infamous battles of World War One. Anyway, it did succeed to an extent, I think, in in distracting the Germans from Verdun. That's why the French quote unquote won Verdun. However, the Battle of the Somme itself would be considered indecisive, which once again shows how horrible World War I was. It's you. Okay, so let's look at the death toll. So, British lost 420,000 people. France lost 200,000 people. Germany lost 440,000 people. So basically a million casualties. It's very bloody, and it wasn't even decisive. Yeah, so that shows the horror of it all, Anyway, that's the 1916. Okay, so 1917 then. 1917. There's one famous battle called the Battle of Passchendaele, also called the Third Battle of Ypres. You remember how the Second Battle of Ypres what was the gas attack? This one's the third. So this town got attacked a lot, and anyways, this was the third battle, also called Passchendaele. And Passchendaele, in retrospect, is notable for being very muddy. It rained. There was a heavy storm during the battle, and I think a lot of soldiers died from drowning in mud. Oh yeah, I completely forgot. No, okay, let's go back to 1916. Battle of the Somme. New technology, the tank. Battle of the Somme, the British used the tank against the Germans. It's the first time a tank was used in warfare, actually. Yeah, it's called a Mach 1 tank. Maybe Pum can show a picture of the tank.
Yeah, I'm the picture guy now.
Yeah, show the tank.
Okay.
Mach 1 tank. It looked very different from the tanks of today. It was, yeah, look at that. It's a parallelogram. Okay, and why were tanks so scary? Because you remember how soldiers were in trenches, right? So these things, they could run over the trenches, and then they're very well protected because of the armor, and they could shoot machine guns at the soldiers. So these tanks were bad news. Okay. Yeah. Look at
So
that.
it's kind of like something to counter the trench.
Trenches. Yeah. It played I think it did play a role in kind of perhaps accelerating the end of trench warfare. Yeah. But then these tanks weren't that effective. They would often get stuck in mud and like ditches, and so these tanks would get stuck a lot. They were very big and unwieldy, so not unwieldy. You're not supposed to wield tanks. Anyway, they were rather immobile. They did play a decent enough role, but like they weren't like the atom bomb or anything. Anyway, 1917 Passchendaele. Yeah, you see, like in Passchendaele, the whole thing was like a big bog. You couldn't get horses or tanks through Passchendaele very easily because it's so wet, it's so boggy. Yeah, right. So a lot of people died from drowning in Passchendaele. Horses died from drowning in Passchendaele. Diseases were rampant in Passchendaele because it's so damp. You'd have to you have to keep your foot in like this gross water for like weeks. Conditions are horrible. Sometimes the water would go up to like your below nose level. And it's not pleasant water. It's not like you're swimming in like Phuket or something. It's mud. It's like yeah, it's horrible. There's there were dead bodies, excrement, blood. Yeah. But Passchendaele was one of the condition wise one of the worst. Let me find some more. Let me see if I can find some more significant stuff.
Oh, by the way,
So it's an offensive launched by the Allies, and a bit inconclusive once again. And it's known for how wet it was. It's known for how damp it was.
Update on time. It's already an hour 20 minutes in. So
Okay, so we have 40 minutes left. We're already in 1917. It's fine.
so
We have 1
we
year
went
left.
a bit quicker.
That's fine though, we're not rushing.
Yeah.
But obviously the consequences of World War World War One is very significant as well.
We can do a whole episode on that if you want.
We also want to discuss about warfare in Asia or Africa.
What? Sorry.
Warfare in the Middle East or Africa.
But yeah, I'm also going to talk a bit about that. The Middle East, the only big thing was Gallipoli, which I already mentioned. Yeah. I'm also going to go a bit about the Eastern Front, do a bit about the Eastern Front, and I guess the Asia Pacific theater. Okay, so Passchendaele. So we're still on the Western Front. We're just doing the Western Front, by the way. I think in 1917, another gas was also implemented. So formerly chlorine gas was used, right? I think in 1917 mustard gas was introduced. So mustard gas was different from chlorine gas in that I think it's very heavy. So I think it would linger for a very long time, and also mustard gas had a blistering effect on your skin. What are you showing? Are you showing mustard gas?
Yes.
Yeah. So these were
So-
these were gas attacks. Yeah. So mustard gas had like a blistering effect. I think it burned. I think it would burn your skin. It's what Saddam
So, like,
Hussein used
you can see the
later on.
picture here, right?
Yeah.
They burn the entire face. Wow, that might be disturbing for some people. But
Ugh.
the thing you can
Yeah.
see here, there's like tear gases, chlorine, phosgene,
Yeah.
and mustard gas.
Yeah, mustard gas was introduced later on. I think it's 1917. Was it 1917?
Yes.
I think it's 1917. Yeah.
1917.
Horrible. Yeah, it's banned by the Geneva Convention or something now. I think it is. So, anyway, it was used for the first time in World War One. Once again, a lot of new stuff was used in World War One. Speaking of technology, let's talk about dogfights. Dogfights are aerial confrontations between fighter pilots. So basically, where you get planes to shoot at each other. Yeah, that's also used for the first time in World War One. In World War One, the planes. Oh yeah, Poom, can you show World War One era planes? Double. What are they called? World War One planes. They had like double. They had two wings. I think they were called biplanes. Biplanes and triplanes. Biplanes. Yep. You show a picture of like a World War One era fighter aircraft. Yep. Yeah, they look like those, and they had machine guns on them. And yeah, so dogfights were first introduced in World War One. So one was the first war where there's extensive use of aircrafts. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Basically, it for important like technological advancements. 1917 and 1918. 1918 is the end of trench warfare. In 1917, the United States joined the war. Because of a telegram. So Germany sent a telegram to Mexico, I think, encouraging Mexico to join the war against the United States and attack the US. The US would stop sending supplies to Britain. So that was like the final straw for America, and so America joined the war against Germany. So it joined the Allies, not the Central Powers. So This is bad news. No, this was bad news, and this would always be bad news. Whenever America joined the war, it's bye bye. So Germany realized that it had to defeat Britain and France before Germany arrived. Because then, if not Germany arrived, before America arrived, Germany had to beat Britain and France before America arrived, because it would be too much by then.
Excuse me.
Otherwise, yes.
Speaking of sending telegrams to other countries done by Germany, you forget about Kabul mission where Germany sent the telegram to Afghanistan. It had British wrath.
Oh yeah, I think that's during the but it wasn't that
Before
effective,
that-
was it?
Yeah.
They sent. I'm not very knowledgeable about that. Let me look it up a bit. I think they sent spies to Afghanistan, right?
Sure.
Were they spies? I don't know. Kabul, no, not Kabul. Kabul mission. World War One. Okay, this is a bit confusing, guys. I most of my World War One knowledge was obtained in like 2020, 2017. I've forgotten some stuff. I had to spare my brain for chemistry equations. Diplomatic mission to Afghanistan sent by the Central Powers encouraged Afghanistan to declare. So America, no, not America. I'm becoming delirious. No, so Germany wanted Afghanistan to join the Central Powers. Afghanistan was So
Actually, for the British controlled it. Farming.
So America. No, so not America. I'm okay. I'm becoming. My mind is going. I keep saying America instead of Germany. No, because so Germany wanted to prick another thorn into Britain's side. So they wanted to get Afghanistan to join the war against Britain. But I don't think it worked. Did it work? It didn't work, right? I don't think it worked.
I don't think
It didn't
so.
work, right?
I think so.
Yeah, the mission failed. I think the Afghans didn't like the Americans in Afghanistan. So not the Americans. Oh my God, the Germans. I think the Afghans didn't like the Germans in Afghanistan. So I think that's kind of what happened. Anyways, I have to stop confusing America and Germany. This would be very bad for 1918. Because 1918, the end of trench warfare. In the spring of 1918, Germany decided we have to do something. We have to beat Britain and France quickly. So they launched a massive offensive, or the spring offensive. The spring offensive of World War One. So in 1918, Germans basically attacked big time. It's a massive attack against the Allies, and in fact, it's almost like the beginning of the war. It pushed them back to Paris, and that's where another battle at the Marne happened. That's called the Second Battle of the Marne, I think. and around this time, the US also arrived. So Germany had exhausted its supply of resources, manpower, and stuff like that. And with the entry of the USA, Germany ran out of resources. So the Allies pushed back, and before they could before they could fully defeat Germany, Germany wanted to sign an armistice. Now pay attention to the word armistice. It's not a declaration of surrender. Germany did not surrender. That's why it felt that the Treaty of Versailles was unfair, because it didn't officially surrender. Germans didn't feel that they lost. That makes sense. They signed an armistice. It's like North Korea and South Korea. It's a ceasefire. Okay? This was in November 11th, 1918. In fact, today I think it's Remembrance Day. Yeah. So armistice day is not Remembrance Day. where they where everyone in the Western Hemisphere would put on red poppies. Why red poppy is interesting trivia. There was a very famous poem called "In Flanders Fields," and when like in Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row, and stuff like that. So that's why poppies became associated with World War One and subsequently with fallen soldiers and Remembrance Day. Remembrance Day is November 11th, by the way, which is the end of World War One in Europe. That's it for the Western Front. Now, the Western Front was the most interesting part of the war. I'll talk a bit of the Eastern Front. So the Eastern Front was Russia against Austria-Hungary and Germany. The Austro-Hungarian army was not effective. It was not very effective. I think there were some language barriers in the in the army and stuff. It did not coordinate that well. One notable thing though is that combat on the Eastern Front was a lot more dynamic. Trench warfare wasn't really a thing in the Eastern Front. The Western Front was a stalemate. The Eastern Front was very dynamic. There were a lot of lots of offensives, big attacks, big territorial gains, big territorial losses, and stuff like that. Yeah, people were riding on horseback with swords. It was charging at the enemy. So that's the Eastern Front. The Eastern Front's not represented as well nowadays. That there's most of the media is about Western Front. You won't come across a World War One film about the Eastern Front very often, but you'll come across lots of World War One films about the Western Front. So the Eastern Front, there's one important offensive, the Brusilov offensive, that's launched by the Russians against the Germans. Brusilov offensive. It happened. The reason why the Eastern Front was a bit because Russia dropped out. Why? Russia dropped out in early 1918 because there was this one guy, which who you might know. He's called Vladimir Lenin, and he's known for being a communist. He was a communist, and in 1917, Russia had a royal family. Okay, I had to be careful about talking about communism and the monarchy, right? Especially against radical people like three of you guys. Anyway, in 1917, Russia, the monarchy was doing very badly. The monarchy was stealing money from the people. Oh no, monarchy collecting too many taxes. Oh no, the king was terrible. Oh no, people hated the king. Oh no, people protested. Oh no, the monarchy committed atrocities against the Russians. Oh no, no resemblance to Thailand whatsoever. I'm saying this because if I said there was, I think I'd get in trouble, and you guys would too. Interestingly, Tsar Alexander was a good friend of King. What do you call him in English again? King Chulalongkorn. Yeah, King Chulalongkorn. Tsar Alexander, who was the king of Russia at the time, was actually a good friend of King Chulalongkorn. But anyways, people hated the king. So they revolted, and in 1917 there were two big revolutions. The first big revolution was in February 1917. Yes, the February Revolution of 1917, the Russian Revolution. So the Russian Revolution.
February Revolution.
February. Yeah, the February Revolution. So the Russian Revolution of 1917, the February Revolution. Okay, so I think Russian Revolution refers. So I think the word Russian Revolution conventionally refers to both February Revolution and the October Revolution. Okay, so basically Russia was fighting in the war, right? But Russia was doing very badly because the people were starving. Russia was running out of money, running out of food, and the people were upset at the Tsar for being incompetent. So what happened was in 1917. Yeah, so in February 1917, which actually happened in March. I think they used some weird calendar, so it's February. It actually happened in March. So in March 1917, the people
is gone for a while.
Hi, I'm back. Accidentally left Discord
Bruh.
on my camera. All right, sorry for the technical difficulty. Anyway, so the February Revolution of March 1917, it led to the end of the monarchy in Russia. So the people successfully revolted, and during that time, what happened was that there were two big incumbent governments after the revolution. First was the more conservative provisional government, okay, and the second one was the Soviets. So the Soviets were led by the Bolsheviks. Is that correct?
Bolsheviks. They're very.
No, I know, I do know. I'm just not sure if it was led by the Bolsheviks. Yeah, so the chairman were these big guys, Trotsky, Zinoviev, famous Bolsheviks. Yes, okay, so let me read. So Soviet, quote unquote Soviet, was a representative body of the city's workers and soldiers. It's like a people's party kind of thing. And okay, so the Soviets were kind of like, it's kind of like a sub-parliamentary system. Does Bam know a lot about this? Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's kind of like a small parliaments, right? Soviets. Yeah, right. And so by late 1917, this big group of because Trotsky was eventually not a Bolshevik. Trotsky was eventually a Menshevik, I think, which was the opponent, which were the opponents of the Bolsheviks. Anyway, so by the end of 1917, this very big group led by Vladimir Lenin, called the Bolsheviks, they are communists, and they were becoming the main group in the Soviets. And in October, they led a revolution called the October Revolution. And so this revolution toppled the provisional government and basically established the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was not properly established until 1922, I think, end of Russian Civil War, right? Soviet Union, 1922, yeah. So the Bolsheviks, Lenin, communists, they knew that the people did not want war. So one of the first things they did was that they pulled out of the war. So they signed an agreement with Germany and they left the war. So now the Eastern Front was no more by like early 1918. Yeah. And afterwards, there was a big civil war in Russia. Russian Civil War lasted for 4 years. Eventually, the Bolsheviks won, and the Soviet Union was properly established in 1922. Became, it doesn't seem like a very important country, right? Poor people definitely won't play a big role in the future. Anyway, Soviet Union wasn't a thing in World War One, but so we don't have to talk too much about that. So that's the Eastern Front. Then the Asia Pacific, Japan. Japan was actually an ally of Britain. Japan was with the Allied powers, right? So Japan helped to capture some German islands, some German colonies, and I think they got to keep them. Yeah, but Japan joined the war mostly because they wanted to get more land. They wanted to get stuff. Japan was a budding world power. Yeah, and Japan kind of wanted to prove its worth. Basically, before World War II, Japan had this mentality of like, hey, the Europeans kind of like, they look down on us a bit, but we can beat them. We beat Russia in the Russo-Japanese War. We got Britain to make a deal with us. We're gonna have like a big empire. Maybe we can do some stuff. So Japan really wanted to get more land because Japan had no resources. Japan had no oil. Japan had no nothing. Japan needed other colonies in order to drain resources from, in order to progress as an empire. And one of the reasons why Japan joined the Axis powers in World War II was because Japan was unhappy with the territorial gains after World War One. Japan was like, hey, that's not enough. I want more. So
Yeah, I would like to add to that as well because I study like ASEAN history, and I think Japan did capture like the whole Southeast Asia, right?
in World War II,
And probably, yeah.
no, it didn't capture the whole Southeast Asia. I think no, because some countries, no, because countries in Southeast Asia were colonies at the time. So
But at one
so
moment,
they were already in the
at
war.
one moment, Japan
So
kind of
in World War
capture
One,
all.
Japan in World War One, Japan invaded German colonies in East Asia. For example,
German colonies.
German New Guinea,
Yeah, Papua New Guinea, right?
German colony in China, in Thailand.
Yeah. So basically Britain asked Japan to help capture these German islands. Basically, that's what happened. But they didn't invade. They didn't launch a full-scale
Also
invasion of Southeast Asia because there's no need to.
The country called Nauru used to be German's colony too.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, Japan captured these small German islands. They didn't do that much. They did do something, but they didn't attack Southeast Asia. Like they didn't land troops in Laos because
Because
there's
in
no.
World War II.
Oh, in World War II, yes. No, in World War II, Japan attacked Southeast Asia because it wanted more land and it was unhappy with its gains after World War One. So Japan was like,
I think Japan captured like the entire
yes,
ASEAN in
basically
World War II.
Japan was very dominant. Yeah. Anyway, no, there's no in World War One. In World War One, most of in World War One, all of Southeast Asia was basically European colonies, the Allies colonies, right? So there's no need to fight. I mean, oh no, not that's no need, right? There's no need to get invaded by another allied nation like Japan, which brings me to the topic of our beloved country, Thailand. Back then, there was not even Thailand, but back then it's called Siam or Siam.
Dean, we could possibly talk about that at the end of our podcast, can we?
Well, okay. So let's talk about. So I've covered most of the main fronts already. Basically, there's some stuff in Africa, but not very important. So basically, what happened? Oh Jesus! I dropped my clock. Steady there. Okay.
So, in addition to this, I would like to add about the war in the Middle East. There's a kingdom named Kingdom of Hijaz, controlled it.
Oh, I know nothing about that.
Under the control of Ottoman Empire. So, what they want is to gain independence from the Ottomans. So the British support them, and eventually, so Arab revolt where and the Kingdom of Hijaz, as I said, gain independence.
Yeah, so that's an important point. The end of World War One led to the end of many empires in Europe. It led to because once World War One ended, right? Once World War One ended, Germany stopped being an empire. Austria-Hungary stopped being an empire. The Ottoman Empire stopped being an empire. So if you guys aren't sure about what empires consist of a main one big country, one. So an empire would consist of the main state, and then this state would have its satellite states and colonies. Okay, so it's basically like the British Empire would consist of Britain and Britain's colonies like Myanmar, India, British, Australia, Canada, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
but
yeah.
This like as you said earlier, like some countries, some countries stopped to be like the empire, which is also applied to World War II. So I think because obviously when you went to war, you you need to exert a lot of resources, I guess, in terms of like human resources. I mean, in terms of human lives, and in terms of like weapons, foods, and stuff as well. So the economy is hurt as well. And I think, for example, after World War II, the French also returned the independence as well as the Brit.
Same for the British, yeah. But that's after World War II. By the end of World War One, like Britain was still an empire. Britain was still an empire up to the end of World War II.
But Britain is probably like the main empire.
Britain was the biggest empire. No, but in Europe, but in pre-World War One Europe, there were many empires were very strong. Germany was a very strong empire as well. By the end of World War One, Germany was no longer an empire. It became afterwards in the 1920s, it became the Weimar Republic. Austria got separated, of course. Oh no! But I wanted to say this because I wanted to add to Palm's topic about countries gaining independence. So at the end of World War One, what happened was there were a lot of new countries like Poland, Bosnia, and Herzegovina. Was that a country by the end of World War One?
Yugoslavia.
Oh, that's still Yugoslavia, right?
Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, that's Yugoslavia. So Bosnia came later. Yugoslavia, and like a lot of like the. I'm actually not very sure about the exact new countries, but there were a lot of new countries in Europe, in Central Europe.
I think many countries turned to democracy as well, right?
Yes,
For
because that's
example,
because
Austria,
Germany,
Germany,
yeah.
Turkey.
That's basically the end of World War One. Basically brought an end to like the power struggle between empires. So there were only very few empires left. Yeah, and many of these countries became democratic, basically. So that's one of the big results of World War One: self-determination in smaller countries. Self-determination means when a country gets the ability to govern its own people.
So, okay, Dean, you have anything more to add on, or want to wrap up to the Treaty of Versailles?
Treaty
I
of
think
Versailles. I can briefly
think-
go over Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles was basically so when World War One ended, Britain and France made Germany sign. Britain, France, and America met at Versailles in France, and they came up with this. They didn't invite Germany, so this was already a red flag, right? Because Germany felt like, hey, I didn't lose the war. I just signed an armistice. It's a peace treaty, so I should be invited to to write stuff in the treaty. You guys can't be too harsh on myself, right? Can't be too hard on my country. Guys can't be too harsh on my country, right? Turns out, what happened was that in the Treaty of Versailles, America didn't really want to punish Germany that badly. America wanted one of the things that America wanted was a global organization for peace. Actually, which led to the League of Nations, which was a massive failure.
I think Thai also was.
Thailand. We can talk about
also
Thailand.
joined
Because
as well.
Thailand didn't play a big role, but Thailand did join. Okay, let me consult my textbook for extreme precision. I don't wanna
Wow.
mess this up.
But it was a good. It was like a decent base for like the later organization called UN.
UN. No, it was the basis, but a very, very faulty one. It was a very big failure.
Sure.
Yeah. So okay. So in the Treaty of Versailles, America wanted to seek basically. America was kind of playing God. Basically, America wanted like, hey, the world should come together. Imagine no war. Imagine peace.
Imagine.
And but America was also still isolationist. America did not want to join future conflicts. So America wanted to create the League of Nations to keep the world stable. Ironically, America did not join the League of Nations. Anyway, why Britain Britain was mainly concerned about the navy, because Britain always had a Britain always prioritized its navy, because Britain was known for having a very strong navy, had the strongest navy in the world, and so Britain wanted the Treaty of Versailles to really prevent the German navy from overtaking the British navy. So other than that, Britain actually wanted Germany to recover economically, because Britain did not want communism to spread to Germany. If a country were to be poor, then the prospects of the rise of communism were a lot higher. So why was the Treaty of Versailles so unfair then? Because of France. France lost a lot of people in the wars. France suffered very heavy casualties. France suffered the most out of the three allies, I think, and so the big three allies. So France wanted revenge. France wanted to kill off any of the remaining. France wanted to basically completely prevent Germany from being able to do anything aggressive towards France again. Okay? So France was very aggressive in the Treaty of Versailles. France wanted big disarmament. France wanted territorial reductions. France wanted heavy reparations and stuff like that. Yeah. So what ended up was that the Treaty of Versailles was a bit unfair because of that. No, it's very unfair. So first of all, there's this thing called the War Guilt Clause. So the War Guilt Clause basically said Germany is responsible for World War One, which technically was not the case. Germany was not the first country to declare war. You can argue that Germany encouraged Austria-Hungary to declare war, but I don't think Germany deserves the War Guilt Clause. What do you guys think? I don't think Germany deserved the War Guilt Clause.
The thing, like,
What do you guys think?
Germany is not even like the start of World War One. It's just like
Germany did not start World War One.
Yeah.
But you historians could argue that Germany encouraged. No, because Germany was like a big brother to Austria-Hungary. So you can say that Germany, like, right? Well, it's debatable. Germany also lost a lot. Yeah, Germany also lost a lot of territory. It lost Poland completely, and there's this thing called the Polish Corridor, which was basically Germany was divided into like two chunks. There's one small chunk in the middle of Poland. Germany lost territory to France. It lost Alsace-Lorraine. Yeah, and Germany was not allowed to unite with Austria and had to give up all overseas colonies. Okay. Demilitarization. Only 100,000 men in the army. Only 100,000 men in the army. No air force. Very small navy, and also pay heavy reparations. Germany was made to pay. Germany was made to pay basically 6,000. I don't know why I don't know why my textbook says this. I don't know why my textbook says 6,600 million rather than 6 billion. Anyway, Germany was forced to pay a massive sum of money. In fact, I think they finished paying the reparations for World War One after the end of World War Two, like long after the end of World War Two, which was ridiculous. Germany lost its empire. Yeah, wasn't allowed to join the League of Nations till 1926. Yeah, when did Germany join League of Nations? 1926. Yep. So Germany suffered heavily, and the people were very angry at the Treaty of Versailles. The people were pissed off. The people were like, "You can't do this to us. We didn't do anything wrong."
So, Dean, is the abolition of German and Austrian monarchy part of the treaty?
It
I think he's liking. Wait, but I think another thing is that they have like lands around the border that they can't like send troops to like occupy the land around the borders too, right? I mean, like the Germany.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, and I think part of the reason that the German finished the payment after World War II was because of the Great Depression as well. Because
Back.
obviously the Great Depression hit the Great Depression hit everyone, especially like because you have to do trades with other people as well. So like it also affects the entire world, and as well as the disease after World War I as well, which is like the 1918 influenza pandemic, which also kind of like slowed down the payment because
Oh, you want to mention the Spanish flu? So in 1918, there's this big pandemic called the Spanish flu. It lasted for 2 years and it killed a bunch of people. Killed a lot. I think it's one of the deadliest pandemics of all time. It went away very quickly because it's quite mysterious. That's not strictly related to World War One, though it's definitely exacerbated by the conditions in World War One. Anyway, so the Treaty of Versailles led to
treaty fair for countries like Serbia, like Belgium.
I'm not very. I don't know a lot about the effects of the Treaty of Versailles in other countries. Maybe you can elaborate.
I don't see much of
Or do
it.
you also not know? Yeah, I don't know much of it either. But most of the Treaty of Versailles was against Germany. That's the big issue with it. Yeah. So one could say it's unfair. I think it's unfair, very harsh, and this pissed off the German people. It also pissed off a guy called Hitler. You know, random German artist. Anyway,
I think you could
so
say
you might
that
ask.
World War I can lead to World War II with us.
Definitely, World War One led to World War Two. So what was the point of World War One then? The point was basically that there was no point in World War One. Like basically, oh, there was a point to it. Like, the countries wanted to show their military advancements. Countries wanted to, yeah, but like it's not like World War Two where where the point was to stop Hitler from taking over the world. It's not like that. It's not like the war in Afghanistan where ostensibly the point was to dispose of the Taliban and stuff. World War One was a manufactured conflict that led to carnage, and the biggest consequence of World War One was that it led to more carnage in World War Two. So it's one of the worst tragedies in modern human history, I would say. Yeah. So that's basically it for World War One. If you want some,
touch on some
so yeah, I forgot to mention about
Siam.
Siam, Thailand, right? We haven't mentioned Thailand yet. Thailand did fight in World War One technically. So Thailand wanted to, unlike Japan, actually Thailand wanted to get a place in among the Western powers. Thailand wanted to be involved, and so in 1917, Thailand declared war on the Central Powers. So Thailand declared war on Germany. However, Thailand only declared war solely because Thailand wanted to make sure that it could get the most out of the war while losing as little as possible, which was actually a very smart move. Very smart move by King Vajiralongkorn. Vajiralongkorn is the current king, right? Wait. Yeah, wait, actually, this is... What's the current king called again?
Let's not talk about that, Dean.
right? No. I'm getting confused.
Elaborate more.
What did the Westerners call King Rama VI? What did King Vajiravud? I'm getting confused. My connection is dying. King Vajiravud, Thai monarchs. Anyway, so King Rama VI joined World War One because he wanted Siam to gain a leverage in political in international relations by becoming one of the victors of the World War One as an allied as a member of the Allied powers.
Take
And
part.
so he joined the war only when it was clear that the Allied would win. Yeah. So I don't think any. So I think like, well, once the war ended, Thailand got to like march, do a victory march in Paris, right? That's a very big boost on the image of Thailand in the West. Since we beat the war as an allied power, they would treat us as more of an equal. So we'd have more influence in international political discussions and stuff. And after the war, Thailand could join the League of Nations.
Dean,
Yes.
can I elaborate more on that? We have research. Should a bit.
Do you want to elaborate more on?
Siam in World War One.
Sure, you can.
So
Go
yeah,
ahead.
in World War One, it didn't do anything. It lost like I think like how many people died? 2.
No, I think Parm wanted to like elaborate more on like Siam and World War One.
You don't have to ask to elaborate, though. You
Yeah,
can just
interesting.
I know I'm not supposed to be the main speaker. It's supposed to be you. You're supposed to be the most knowledgeable person around here.
You didn't stop to talk. So.
Oh,
yeah, that's
sorry.
fine. You can talk now.
I shall compel myself to shut up.
No. So at the beginning, Siam remained neutral in the World War One. There are some royalties who is on either Central Power side or the Allied side. For example, Prince Chakrapong Phuanat and Prince Thewawong Warothai were on the Allied part. Plus, the latter, Prince Chakrapong Phuanat, he studied in Russia and the another prince, he had a good relationship with Colonies and British embassy. Also, some prince study in Germany and were on the German side, and so they are against the plan to declare war on Germany.
That's it, right? Okay. Oh no.
As Dean said, finally they did declare war on Germany, and I guess they sent a troop of 1,000 soldiers to France, led by Phraya Thep Hasadin, but finally didn't take part in any battles.
Yeah, because by the time they arrived, basically the war was already over. I think like 2 people died because of disease, something. Yeah, so it's actually a very smart move. King Vajiravud, not Vajiralongkorn. King Vajiravud, confusing king names. It's King Rossi. Rossi was King Mongkut. Ro5 was King Chulalongkorn. Ro6 was King Vajiravud. 7 was King Prachatipok. 8 was King, I don't even know, Poklao or Mahidol. Poklao was 7, right? I'm confused. I'm sleep deprived.
7 is Prince Prachatipok.
I do not remember anything about Thai history. 7 was Prachatipok, yes. 8 was
Uh,
Mahidol.
I will cut that part on podcast, but can I talk about
I'm just yeah.
we'll
Yeah, we
edit
can
that
go
part
ahead
out.
on our topic.
By the way,
Yeah.
Yeah,
5 minutes
it's 2 hours now, so we can kind of wrap things up soon. Because maybe like
In
10 to 15
in the Treaty of Versailles, so Siam cancel some treaty they have done with Austria and Germany. Also, the treaty the Bowing Treaty. Some parts of it were cancelled, like the free trade.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
because Mr. Francis Beecher, an American who worked in Thai Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he got a bit of connection because it's actually Woodrow Wilson's son-in-law.
Yeah, so by joining World War One, Thailand actually gained quite a bit from it, while losing very little. Yeah, so it's quite a smart move. King Washirawut.
So, do you guys have anything to add to this? I think we could talk a little bit about the Great Depression and like the economy.
Nah, that's too.
The
That's
effects on the
too.
economy. So
Great Depression is a bit too much of a stretch. I think. I think Great Depression. I think you can, if you want to, you can dedicate a whole episode to 1920s. Yeah.
Let's come to a conclusion of our.
right. So I have around 2 questions. I guess I'll ask one first, and I'll ask another after the conclusion. So this question is for Dean and maybe Bomb. So what made you interested in World War One? I think you have already mentioned this earlier, but
It's a
maybe you
book.
can give
It's a horrible
some-
history book out of all things. Yeah, I read it in a day. I got a book. Yeah, it got me hooked. I actually wanted a book on something else. I think I wanted a book on like World War Two. I got one for World War One. So I learned more about World War One first, but nowadays I think I'm fine with both wars. Although I'm not like a historian, you know, my knowledge is still very trivial compared to what you would expect from historians. I think even Palm knows more than me.
maybe.
Palm is the
So that's
certified best historian in Thailand. Ask Pet Yon Mongkut.
Actually, I don't specifically look on World War One or World War Two, but it's my passion to history.
right. So
Yeah.
let's wrap things up, I guess.
No other questions?
I'll have one more, but it's
Let's
probably
talk about the
at the end.
You should do viewer submitted questions.
Maybe later.
Yeah. Ask like beforehand. Probably won't be able to answer most of them.
So I think Bomb and Dean can sum this up, I guess, because we are running short on time as well.
World War One. Very useless war. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'd call it. I'd call it useless. It's not inconsequential, but in terms of what would lead a country to sacrifice millions of men for something, it's not worth it. What do you think? Panit Mangon Panit.
I mean, if there is a war, obviously everyone hurts. I have said this earlier in terms of like people's life. terms of like economics, politics, or in terms of like how it affects future generations. So everyone's
Yeah,
lost.
especially for World War One, it's very pointless.
I
You
would
didn't
say
need it too much.
it's a proposed or wanted war that later became pointless or unwanted.
I think it's also
Yeah.
I think it also reflected on like mentality of people at that time too, especially like people that have like power to like control the country and like let countries to do like some military decisions, whether like it's like sort of like how people think back then. I guess that's what I'm was trying to.
Yeah. World War One did play a big part in stuff though, like women's rights. Women were allowed to vote in Britain after World War One. I think women could go to cinemas without men, because women played a role in World War One. Women entered. Women contributed to the war effort. Yeah, women contributed to like the British war effort by producing bombs, shells, not seashells. Shells are like bombs that you shoot from big artillery guns. Yeah. That's kind of it, I think. We won't have time for we won't have time for a lot of post-war stuff. We can if you want to do one for World War II, I suppose we can find a way to link it. But even then, I think it's too much for one episode. I think the 1920s and 30s would be enough for one whole episode. How Hitler and Stalin got to where they got to.
20th and 30s are enough for one episode for like both. Like USA alone is enough for one episode.
So I guess that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I have
So-
one final question for us, Nicholas.
What one?
So, do you think what ideas are still lingering around society around like World War One, and what do you think we can learn from World War One? I guess Ing can go first, I guess, and I'll go second,
Okay.
and then you two can like talk later.
So I think World War One taught us like a lot about the brutality of war. That's what I said earlier about like how at first people like, oh yeah, we want war, it's like pretty cool stuff. But like after that, oh no, we don't want war anymore. I think the World War One taught us about like the brutality and like the horror of machineries and technological development as well, which might cause some like mistrust in technology in the future too.
For me,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about what ideas are still lingering around the society, but maybe.
What do you mean ideas? You mean what does the public think about World War One? Is that what you're trying to say?
Maybe like yeah, what do we think about World War One nowadays? I don't think
Okay.
people care a lot about World War One because most people mainly talk about World War Two. I think I'm not sure because I think it's a more recent one, and World War Two was overseen like it's more impactful in terms of like how we see things from like the present day. But obviously there are a lot of things to learn from it. Obviously, as Ing mentioned earlier, brutalities, and I mean, as we see how reality of human, because we never imagined how there would be this much loss in just like 3 or 4 years. It's just one of the worst nightmare for humanity eras that we have ever encountered.
Do I go next?
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
World War One is mostly forgotten today. Yeah, which is kind of the tragedy of it. So many people died for nothing. Basically, people might know some things about World War Two today, but World War One is mostly like forgotten by a lot of people today. Mainly because of how pointless it was. It led to nothing. Started from a lot, led to nothing. Yeah. And
I would say
what do we learn from World War One? I think World War One. I think the beginning of World War One teaches us necessity for countries to seek diplomatic solutions and to avoid allowing tensions to just rise uncontrolled. Yeah, so uncontrollably. I mean, so yeah. So it's important for countries to maybe seek more diplomatic and peaceful relationships, because given how much technology has advanced, right? Because in World War One, people still didn't know about the carnage that would happen, but now that we know, war isn't a viable option to most things anymore. Say that to Putin. But the ending of World War One is also very important. The Treaty of Versailles teach us about how when a war ends, right? It's maybe not the best idea to punish a country too harshly, because then that leads to a lot of tension still, And basically the fact that Hitler succeeded in Germany was because the people were very indignant, very resentful, because of the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty, which was meant to stop Germany from being aggressive, actually brewed another war. Yeah, so I think those are some of the things that we can learn. Right, Bam.
for me, last but not least, I hope so. It's World War One is kind of a theater that projects the current circumstance of how bigger countries or strong countries exploit on smaller or weak countries. As you can see from the rape of Belgium to Treaty of Versailles. So
Okay.
So
hope that would not happen again.
I think
Never again.
this is it for today.
All right.
So let's say goodbye.
You want to read?
For joining us.
You want to read in Flanders Fields before? All right. Maybe we can. No, we can you can discuss. You can bring up war poetry in your literature discussions. Lots of poetry in World War One. But I think that's enough for today. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean. Our first guest.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you
a
for
pleasure.
joining us. Maybe we can
Right.
invite you to future episodes too.
I hope I didn't convince you not to invite me again.
Nah, maybe. Okay,
All right.
bye.
Bye bye.
Oh, actually, it's a